Is it too late to start real estate investing in 2026? Because right now it might feel like everyone else is quitting, selling their houses, or waiting for interest rates to drop. What I found is all quitters have one thing in common. They never learned the one concept that separates out investors who thrive in a tough market from the ones who panic and quit. That concept has a name, and by the end of this video, it will permanently change how you analyze every single deal that you come across. So let's start off with talking about the most expensive pitfall that you might be falling for that nobody tells you about. I call it can't pull the trigger syndrome. Maybe you just got started and are excited about real estate, but you want to do this right so you don't lose your hard-earned money. Maybe you also read books on real estate investing, listened to podcasts, or watched videos. And at the end of every one of them, there's this quiet voice that whispers in your head, at least it did for me. Maybe I should just listen to one more podcast or read one more book. Because what if I'm missing something? Something that could lose me a lot of money. You need to realize that that voice in your head is not actually protecting you. It's costing you a lot. Because if you listen to it, you're never going to get started, which leads to never being able to buy back your time, being chained to your 9-to-5 job, and never being able to create your own source of income, which real estate investing gives you. So the only way to escape can't pull the trigger syndrome is to realize that the only way to actually get what you need to know to invest in real estate is to go out there and get it in real life. To actually experience it rather than getting stuck reading a bunch of books, where you learn nothing about actually applying that knowledge. So let me tell you what I did to get out of this syndrome. I picked up a phone and called a realtor in Stockton, California to buy my first rental. And I have to admit, I was pretty nervous. I couldn't stop my hands from shaking and sweating. I also had a slight tremor in my voice. The thoughts that were racing through my head were, what if this realtor doesn't take me seriously? What if I sound like I don't even know what I'm doing? What if they can tell I'm a newbie and takes advantage of me? Maybe they push me to buy an expensive house so that they can get a higher commission. Luckily, the first realtor I called didn't hang up, and he took me to see 3 properties, and I purchased one of them. And you know what? It was the least scary thing that I did the entire year. And that's because the fears in your head are actually scarier than the true experience of getting started in real estate investing. Now, I found a deal, but I needed to choose the right strategy to optimize the profit I would get on that deal. That's when I ran the math that changed everything for me on that very first investment. Let's say we buy a 4-bed, 2-bathroom house nearby a university. Let me show you on the whiteboard. The standard market rent on a single-family rental is about $2,000 a month usually. Most investors look at the mortgage, which is also $2,000 a month, and then they see zero cash flow and they walk away. Instead, what I see looking at that exact same house is $4,200 in rental income. Let me explain. So this is the same property, same mortgage, same expenses, but let's say this time I rent it out by the room to college students. Let's say I can add an extra 2 bedrooms to convert maybe the living room or family room into bedrooms, so I can have 6 total bedrooms at this house. Next, let's say I rent out those 6 bedrooms at $700 a month per bedroom. That means I'm making $4,200 a month in total rental income. Let's assume my mortgage and expenses is about $2,200 a month. That means my total cash flow is $2,000 a month. And this is on the exact same house those quitters walked right past. And here's why it works quite well. I am cheap and affordable for the customer compared to the on-campus dormitories. I only am charging $600 or $700 a month versus the on-campus dormitories are charging $1,200 to $1,300 per month, plus the student has to pay for a meal plan and they have to pay for parking. Whereas my parking is free. Because my student housing product is affordable, demand is constant and you really don't have to worry so much about vacancies. Now, let's say you borrow my rent by the room student housing strategy for yourself. To be really successful in student housing, you have to optimize what I call the pick 2 rule. In college, we have this funny saying, you have the choice between getting enough sleep, getting good grades, and having a social life, and you can only pick 2. Real estate has a very similar rule. Let me show you on the whiteboard. Every landlord faces the same 3-way trade-off. quality, affordability, and speed. And you can really only optimize 2 of them. Otherwise, by trying to focus on all 3, you end up actually accomplishing none of them, similar to the college example. Most landlords, when the market gets tough, sacrifice quality. They get desperate, drop their screening standards, and then try to fill the rental quickly. And that's exactly how nightmare tenants move in. I do the opposite. I sacrifice speed instead and focus on quality and affordability. And that one sacrifice is what makes everything else work. Let me explain. Think about the investor who finds a decent house, wants to get it rented out quickly, and rushes the contractor. They cut corners, they get a tenant in the door quickly, and just a few months later, deferred maintenance issues start popping up everywhere because they rushed the process. A leaking pipe, a furnace breaking down. I know that story intimately because it happened to me. And I'm going to show you what going quickly actually cost me in dollars. A few years ago, one of my furnaces died on me in January in the middle of winter. My tenants needed heat that night and I panicked. I called the first contractor that I could find without any vetting, without asking for any references, and no time to check his reviews. I basically used the very first person who picked up the phone. When he installed the furnace, it was too underpowered for the house. However, when I called him back to come and fix the issue, he actually ghosted me completely. But I already had wired him $5,000. This guy was a scammer. So now I had an insufficient heating system, a missing contractor, and 6 tenants that were freezing their butts off. I had to bring in a reputable HVAC company to rip out his work and put in a new furnace that cost me $8,700. So the total cost was $13,700, but I didn't have to pay that extra $5,000 that I lost just because I wasn't patient. So as a new investor, take your time. Don't just buy a house that kind of works. Wait until one pops up that's closer to a home run. And take the time to get the right tenants. If you get a bad vibe from them, then you don't have to bring them in. Just wait for a better one to show up. Finally, take your time to properly vet a property by getting thorough inspections and then getting a written quote to repair all the items found on that inspection. Take that written quote and send it to the seller to negotiate with them to cover all of the repair costs. This is the philosophy behind my student housing business that grew to bringing in multiple 6 figures. Now here's where most of the people who hear this strategy self-destruct. They see the math, they see the $2,000 a month in cash flow, and they get all excited, and then they think, wait a second, I'm not babysitting 6 college kids. And I totally get it. That one fear is a big reason why so many people haven't explored this niche. I call it the I don't want to be landlord to a frat house fear. But I need you to consider something for a second. What if the frat house problem is really just a systems problem? Meaning you just need to create a system that effectively discourages frat party type tenants. Let's talk it through right now. The frat house happens because a landlord is desperate. When you have no tenant leads, you go into desperation mode because you have to fill your vacancies. So basically you have no standards for the applicants. And when you have no standards, you take whoever applies. Unfortunately, many of your applicants won't be great fits or great tenants. So the question becomes, how do you stop being desperate so you can be picky about who you bring into your rental? I recommend taking advantage of something I call the wildfire effect. Here's how it works. Instead of pushing to find great tenants through advertising and cold calling, what you want to do is attract the right tenants like a magnet. Just a little bit about college students. They are socially wired in a way that no other tenant demographic is. They shop together, eat together, study together, go out to movies together. That's why word travels around a college campus faster than it travels anywhere else on earth. I know this because when I was in college, I would hear stories about so-and-so before I even met them. But when I finally met them for the first time, I pretty much already knew their personality, their likes and dislikes, who their primary friend group is, their major, and pretty much everything. So what this means for you is a bad reputation spreads overnight. but a great reputation spreads just as well. I call it the wildfire effect because they say that word on a college campus spreads like wildfire, and you need to take advantage of that fact. So how do you do that? Building a living environment so great that you turn your tenants into your marketing system. Practically, this is what it looks like. What I do is I get rid of old carpet and replace it with really nice looking luxury vinyl plank, which is also cheap and cost efficient. I also swap out any dim lights for new bright LED lights. And I do new paint wherever it will improve the overall vibe of a house. Make it clean, modern, and just a bit nicer than all of the other Craigslist rentals out there that are within a mile drive to campus. When a student walks through your door after touring 3 ugly, poorly maintained rentals, their decision's already made. In fact, I had this exact thing happen to me. The one guy who toured the house called his friends that same night. His friends were all on the same baseball team together. Those friends called me the next morning to sign a 2-year lease to rent out all of the bedrooms at the house. So if you put in the hard work to make your property look nice for students, you're set for life. And the result is that I have not had to run ads for my student rentals because students come in through the student referral system. And my properties are pre-leased for the next school year, months before the next school year even starts. And I don't need to spend money on marketing to make that happen. This is the wildfire effect. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, Ryan, this all sounds great in theory, but how much better does the rent by the room model actually perform compared to renting out the whole house? Well, I ran the numbers side by side. I took the same house in the same market at the same interest rate, and what I found made question why people even bother with investing in real estate the traditional way. That full breakdown is in the next video right up here. I'll cover the best strategy that maximizes your investment, your time, and your profits. You're going to want to understand these numbers so that you can be successful from the start in real estate investing. Go ahead and click up here. And as usual, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe, and share with others who are struggling with getting started in real estate investing. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.